active in the real world because she's just got so much going on in her head, but she is a savant of a kind, and they found her and they tested her, and they can do any kind of testing they want. She remembers absolutely everything she has ever experienced. That is an Anunnaki brain. At least it's an Anunnaki brain stuck in a human body.
Yeah.
But it does, again, cause her problems. But savants, and we have well over 100 now that are known and have been tested and in various categories of music and math and all, the Rain Man, all the things that they do. But in general, when you're a savant, to get that savant skill, you lose your normalcy. And this woman has lost some of her normalcy as well, but she's not really bad, but she still has trouble functioning because she doesn't really know how to harness that power that she has, like the Anunnaki would, because it's more natural to them. But for those of us who are like normal, we have our normal intelligence, you, me, most, everybody listening to this show, all of that is blocked off. The superpower of our brain is in our head. It's in our head, every one of us, but there is like a shield there to keep us from using only a very small part of our brain. Let's just call it 10% because it's obvious if you put together all of the different savant gifts, and if you put all of that in our brain, and my brain, and your brain, if we had the musical power of that blind savant in England who can, just all the savants that there have been, put all of those skills in our brains, and they're in there. They are in there. All of those skills are in every one of our heads because we have the Anunnaki brains. And if you could drop that barrier, if you could drop that shield and give us access to that that's in our brains naturally, then we would be them. We would be the equivalent of them. We would be gods in our own way because we would have not only the access to all that knowledge and information and skill, but we'd have the ability to just naturally use it from birth.
Yeah.
And we would be them in that sense. So that is out there in our future, Hendrik, but only if we live long enough as a species to get to the point where we can drop that barrier. And I don't know at this point, it certainly isn't going to happen in my lifetime, probably not in yours, but if the species lives long enough and we maintain our level of sophistication, that day will come when that brain barrier is going to be dropped and new ones of us are going to come online that are going to be as powerful intellectually as the Anunnaki. And you're right in that will set them apart, and there'll be a whole new dichotomy between the two types, and then our type will die out. No parent's going to want their kid to be born the way we are, the way they are. They're going to want the new model,
Yeah.
And so before you know it, all you're going to have is the new models, and just like the scientists that have to die out believing the old reality, we'll all die out, and that new type of human being that is basically an Anunnaki with a different kind of biology will be on planet Earth, but only if we survive that long.
Yeah. And I mean, I would suggest at this point that there actually is a small faction that have the knowledge that we've been talking about in a way or another form. I'm thinking about, things like the looting of the mythological records. I mean, going back even to the Vatican, when Pizarro went over to, South America, what have you. We're told that a lot of it was burned and so forth. I think there is actually a lot of, collected knowledge, if you will, in certain libraries here and there that have begun to, with curiosity, of course, just like we've done because we're curious. We've asked the questions, and here we are, as it were. But that they pieced together some of this and started to realize that, wait a minute, what the heck is going on here? And consequently started to fund a lot of these types of research developments. If we compare and look at, for instance, how the computer industry was first financed and brought up in Silicon Valley. Now the top corporations, or the majority, I should say, of the corporations in Silicon Valley actually are DNA related, and there's a huge upswing, if you will, of this kind of research. And someone at least is putting in the money. Someone is interested in seeing this come about, and maybe, just maybe, someone has this knowledge and is trying to unlock these secrets, if you will, of the human mind and of the human genome. What do you think, Lloyd?
I think it's quite possible that people are aware. I mean, I'm certainly aware, and I've been talking about it for 10 years, and Sitchin's been talking about it for, even longer. So there has to be people out there who are aware blood-brain barrier in all of our heads and that it can be removed genetically. But I don't think that we're yet sophisticated. We're just now at the point, Hendrik, where we're decoding the whole genome, and there's still stretches of it that we don't understand and we haven't been able to decode. So until you know every single brick in the building and what that brick does, what its function is, you can't really start changing the look of the building and moving it around. And I mean, we do genetic manipulation now on a lot of things. We do it on crops, we do it on animals. We're beginning to learn the basics of it. But to go inside our own heads and do what I think is going to prove to be a very sophisticated genetic maneuver. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe it's just one gene done a certain way, and if you do it a different way, boom, the whole thing is fixed. It could be as simple as that. I don't think it is. I think, given how much trouble they had to create us in the first place, this is based on the records as they come down from the Sumerians, given that they had a lot of trouble to put us together in the first place, I think that it's going to be a complex kind of, you see that kind of joke picture that goes around on the internet of the telephone pole in India with the wires going all over the place, and it says, this is where you have to call to get your problems on your computer fixed, and it's kind of funny, but that's kind of probably how our brains are, where it's just, dozens of wires kind of crossing over each other and some of them taped together, and it's going to be kind of a jury-rigged system. I don't see it as being really very smooth or very simple. It could be, but I don't think that. I think it's going to be harder than we imagine, you and I imagine sitting here right now, but I think it can be done. I think it can be undone in the way it was done, but I think it's going to take more time and more difficulty than we imagine right now.
I think so too, and I think that that's also why potentially a lot of these people are actually looking into alternatives to solve this riddle, if you will, in a way. And what many people are looking at, people like Aubrey de Grey, but also connecting that with people like Ray Kurzweil, for instance, they're looking towards developing an artificial intelligence that actually will help to progress the human being, and a self-replicating and self-improving machine, as it were, an artificial intelligence would potentially be able to solve something like this. And I know that there are researchers out there today who are definitely very focused on making this come about and solving this. So what they're saying potentially could happen is what they call the technological singularity, when everything basically explodes because development is happening so fast, and the help that this might come about then because of the help of this artificial intelligence. That just that's not true today from what we know, at least, but they're looking into it. So we'll just have to see what happens. It's interesting though,
It is. Well, also too, the other possibility is, and this is the simple way to go about it. An alien or Anunnaki or somebody just comes down or comes forward and says, look, here's how you do it. Just the way they used to tell you how to, make bread, or, all the things that they told simple primitive humans how to do to make their lives better at that level. Who is to say that we won't get another booster shot of knowledge like that? Okay, here's, we think you're ready now, here's what you have to do. But I don't think they're going to do that as long as we're as primitive and as self-destructive and as all of the bad things that we are. I don't see anybody necessarily coming in to really help us, to make us smarter with all of the bad things that we have about ourselves, to put a better brain in our heads, possibly more destructive, because when you do that, it's a double-edged sword. You're teaching us how to do a lot of good things by having that kind of intelligence, but it's also teaching us how to master weapons that will make nuclear weapons probably look like pop guns, just like BB guns.
Yeah.
And if they're out there in the universe and they're looking in at us, and they say, wait a minute, if we give this crowd the ability to make a weapon that'll blow up a planet or blow up a sun, do we really want to put that in their hands? And I think they have to tell themselves, well, no, they're not quite ready yet. So we probably have a lot of progression we have to make just from a moral standpoint before somebody will come down and give us the key and just give us the keys to our own intelligence. They'd have to think long and hard about giving it to us, given who we are and what we are and how poorly we manage the planet and how poorly we manage our relationships between each other.
I agree, and at the same time, what could be possible is that our kind of toxicity might be coming about because that we are restricted because of this limitation in the brain, and if we actually unlock it, we might reach a whole new level of balance, if you will, in a way, and we might actually be live in this way that we do right now because we have been limited and cut off, and we're not whole, as it were. We're not whole beings in a way, and
it's possible. That I guess that would be the gamble that somebody would have to take in giving us, a small group of us, that information, and allowing those kind of people to proliferate among us. Would they be tempted by the evil side that would be pressuring them to do things for the evil purposes that we have, or would they maintain the high moral ground and do only the right thing and work to make to thwart those who are in power right now? I don't know. That the moral issues of it are very complex, and I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows what those people would do if they were given that kind of brain power. What would they turn out to be like? The Anunnaki were bad folks. They were bad. They treated each other very badly, and if you go back over the records of how they lived and how they interacted, there were wars. In fact, they left. They seem to have left after a war of around 2,000 years ago, where they unleashed the equivalent of nuclear weapons on each other, killed most of each other off, and the survivors left the planet behind for us at around 2,000 years ago, around the time of Christ. Probably the Star of Bethlehem was Nibiru coming around again the most recent time. That would be my guess.
Really? That is interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. So, I mean, what we might be looking at here is also a small faction of the Anunnaki. This might be a renegade group, if you will, that were in some way trouble with the majority of the other Anunnaki. I mean, at still point we're way out at the edge of our galaxy in a way, and we're not privy to have all the information on what the heck is going on in at the center there, and there might be incredible many different races, and one thing that might also be the case here, if we were to speculate, of course, is that the knowledge that we have been manipulated has been coming about to other races and can see the damage that they caused to us, and I don't know if anything help is involved in that sense, but it feels like sometimes that we're left here out on the fringe of the galaxy because we need to sort out, if you will, our internal dichotomy of these sides that we have inside us. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's certainly an interesting point to ponder about.
Well, personally, what I think is that the Anunnaki themselves are a created species like us, and they're created to the level that they are, but they're grossly imperfect. And so they created us in the way that they were created, and we're even more grossly imperfect than they are. But I think that there are beings out there, perhaps the ones that created the Anunnaki, or perhaps the ones that created the Anunnaki. I mean, you can go back as far as you want, but there are beings out there that are natural, like we were talking about the hominoids, that are natural beings that have developed, and they don't have those evil tendencies. It could well be like it is at Star Wars, which I think is, all those many types out there. That could well be the reality of the universe. But I don't think that most of them are really evil, and that there's, the dark side, and I don't really see it. I think when you get past a certain point of intelligence and sophistication and development, you just don't need to do that. You can make your own way without really harming other people, and you can get anything that you want or anything that you need just by the sheer power of your knowledge. So I think there comes a point where the ideal that you and I were talking about earlier is possible, and probably is the way beings live in those lucky places that are, quote, natural in every aspect. But you do have the unnatural ones, and I think that the Anunnaki fall into